Crank up the volume and get ready for real-world bird hunting by listening to the Wingmen Podcast by Eastman's. Now your host, Todd Helms.
This episode of the Wingmen Podcast is brought to you by Savage. You know, a couple years ago, guys, when I got my hands on the first Savage Renegade that I'd ever seen, I was really curious about this new shotgun and this new kind of design that they had going on. And I tell you what, that curiosity turned into being blown away pretty quickly. I love how the Savage is tough as nails and just performs and kills birds across the board in any condition I need it to. I've had a couple thousand rounds through the models that I have now, and they just flat go bang and kill birds, which is what I need. I love the fact that I can change the fit and the feel, and the performance is next level. Gotta love the Savage Renegade. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Wingmen Podcast. And this week's guest is Brandon Moss, Montana Uplander. And Brandon lives just north of us here in Wyoming. He's up in Montana, not very far away. And got a hold of me, or I got a hold of him. I can't remember exactly how that went, Brandon, but here we are going to talk bird hunting, mostly upland bird hunting, because that is your passion, right? Brandon, thanks for being on the podcast, man.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm glad this worked out. Everybody's sickness going around and busy schedules, and we had to reschedule a couple times, and you were super flexible, so I appreciate that.
Not a problem. Glad we can do it.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what your passion for upland bird hunting.
So I'm Brandon Moss. I live in Billings, Montana. I've lived here pretty much my whole life. Moved to Utah for a little bit when I was in high school, but other than that, I've been based out of Montana. Done a lot of bird dog training in other states for a while during the summers and stuff like that. Go down to Texas and up over to North Dakota. But just been Montana my whole life. I'm married and I got 3 daughters that are one in college, one in high school, one's an 8th grader, and they play sports and also go hunting with me.
That's busy.
Yeah, so it's a good time.
Heck yeah. So explain the connection that we have here, because if I remember correctly, I was sitting in a meeting the other day, maybe a month ago, and the boss man, Ike Eastman, said, "Hey, I met somebody who listens to your podcast and follows what Wingmen does. You should have him on a podcast. He's a local guy." And I said, "Okay, who is it?" And he said the name, and I looked you up. There you were, and we got hooked up. How did you find the Wingmen Podcast?
I've always followed. So I'm a big upland hunter, but I love big game just as much. And so
Sure.
Growing up, like with my dad, he would always read me when I was younger, books like Jack O'Connor books and stuff like that. And then we would watch Gordon Eastman shows together. And so that was, yeah, exactly. And I still watch those. I still love them. They were the best and still are great. And so I've always followed Eastman's, and we kind of, they talk about being the 3rd generation, the 3 generations there and stuff like that. And it kind of fits in line with what I am. I'm a 4th generation hunter, and my family, I was talking to Ike, and I told him my grandfather started hunting birds with his dad in 1909. So my
Wow.
great grandfather was hunting big game and birds down in southern Utah in the 1800s. So I've kind of had that weird connection to the Eastmans with the generation thing, and really liked them. And it was kind of funny because I was sitting in one of my 8th grade daughter's basketball games, and I kind of I'm walking out and I peek over my shoulder and I said, "Hey, are you Ike?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so we just started talking that way.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
It's a small world, man. You never know, where you're going to bump into folks that share the passions that we share, and
Mm-hmm.
I've had this conversation with so many people, but the hunting, for lack of a better term, brotherhood, if you will. And I'm not defining it to sex there. I'm just, lumping it in. The group of us as hunters, men, women, to all of us, we're all joined by that common bond, you know, and I kind of see it as like an umbrella that kind of breaks out, or a tree with branches, I guess. And hunting is the big general broad canopy. And then we've got the different types, whether it's big game or waterfowl or upland bird hunting or turkey hunting, but we're all hunters, and we all share that same passion and love of the outdoors and wild places and wild animals. And I just love how that brings us together. You know, it's just such a cool thing.
It is. Most of my buddies, like 95% of my buddies, I've made through hunting. And so I, three of my really good friends started off with an email just asking a question. And then it connected me to this person. And we go down to Texas, go hunt birds together. We got to Nebraska. They come up here to Montana. And it's just, we're good friends. We, best of friends and get together. And it all started off with the hunting email. So my best friend here, I told him I train bird dogs. He said, I'm a vet and I'm looking for a bird dog. And we've been friends for over 20 years, and we're more like brothers than we are friends.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's the best thing. Yeah, that's the best part of it. Is you just never know where you're going to meet great folks, or great folks that are like-minded, at a basketball game or at the gas station or via email. You just never know. It's cool.
It is.
So you love to train bird dogs. Tell us about that. What breeds do you train? What do you train specifically for? Just kind of share that with us. Share that passion.
So I've trained all pointing dogs in some labs and stuff like that. I'm not much of a lab guy. I know you are, but
it's because I hunt a lot of waterfowl.
Yeah, and I've barely hunted waterfowl. I'm out here on the prairies of Montana. And so I take to the pointy dogs pretty much. But I've trained most breeds of pointy dogs. My own personal dogs that I've had since the day I was born, my family had them, and I still have them now, are Brittany's. I love my Brittany's. I've had them. I've had English pointers. I've had setters, and I've had short hairs, and they're all good dogs. But I just go back to the Brittany's. I just love them. They work real well in this country. Brittany's kind of get a reputation a lot of times of being like a close working dog and stuff like that. Not here on the prairies. You want a dog that it helps to have a dog that kind of stretch your limits a little bit. And so my Brittany's, they get out there a good distance away from me hunting, and they'll be out there. I've had points at like 500, 600 yards away.
Wow, that's a long ways for Brittany.
Yeah, it is. It really is. But it's what works well, for what I love, and it works well in this country, and I just stick with it.
Yeah. Are you running French Brittany's, American Brittany's? What are you running?
American Brittany's, yeah.
Okay. A little bit bigger, leggier dog.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My males, they run they're like in that 48 to 50 pound range, and they're pretty trim. They don't have any fat on them. You can see like a little bit of hip bone, a little bit of ribs and stuff like that. That running physique that you want them in. And those days on end. So they're a little bit bigger. My female is I think she's about 38 pounds. So she's on the big side of the females. So they a little bit longer legs, and they stretch out a little bit more.
Yep. Yeah. I had my grandfather, ran Brittany's before I came along, when my mom talks about them all the time, airing the dogs and training dogs with my grandfather back in Michigan, and they were French Brittany's, and the little close working tight quarter ones. And they were perfect for that cover back there in the Midwest, where guys are hunting grouse and woodcock and hunting pheasants in smaller, tighter cover, So I've had an affinity for Brittany's for a really long time, and just never owned one myself.
Well, we can change that.
When you said Brittany's, I went, my old Mackinaw dog turned 12 today, and I don't know where the time has gone with that. It seems like just yesterday I was bringing him home from Double T Kennels in Kansas, and man, I look at him, and he's great. He still hunts. He still does everything I need him to do. He's getting pretty hard of hearing, so turning him loose in a cornfield, I might not find him for 2 days, one of those deals, because he can't hear me anymore.
No. Yeah.
But,
I had one Brittany that was, my oldest one was 17 years old still on her.
Wow.
Thank goodness for GPS collars, because she was totally deaf. She could still see, but I'd take her out hunting. And, she didn't produce birds, but she just, she was going to go give it all she had. And it was fun to watch her, fun to be out there. She got tired. She come walk next to me, but that GPS, if she ran off a ways, I could find her. So that was kind of nice. But like you said, it's hard, where the years go, they just fly by with these dogs. It's it really is just a neat thing to have them, but it goes by so fast.
Oh man. Yeah. Like I said, I woke up this morning and realized that, he turned 12, and I went, hey, knew it was coming, but I was just thinking, holy smokes, and made a couple social media posts about it, today or this morning when I got to work, and I'm looking through pictures going, dude, that seems like it was yesterday, and it just enjoy them while you have them, because the last one I had before Mac was she lived 3 years and got hit by a car on a fishing trip, just a freak deal, but it was, you just don't know. And that's a good analogy, or, a good approach for anything in life. But man, it seems like it applies especially to dogs, because they're just not with us that long. Enjoy them while you have them,
Exactly. I know. As I get older, I started looking at the rest of my years and how many dogs I got left, how many dog generations I have left.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad just about a year ago this time last year, he put down his 14, or I think she was either 14 or 15-year-old GSP, and he's done, and he's like, no, I'm not getting another dog. I'm 72 years old and I don't have another dog in me. And I'm thinking, yeah, you do, but he's just like, no, I don't, not emotionally. I don't have another one in me.
No.
And I'm like, okay, and I keep leaning on him a little bit, but he lives in great bird country back in Iowa. And I'm like, man, you should get a Brittany, you should get a Brittany, and we'll see, maybe.
Hopefully he will. Yeah, hopefully he will. So, but it's kind of funny he says that, is the older you get, like you think, when these dogs pass on, the older you get, the a little bit easy, you get used to it a little bit more. But it seems like for me, it gets harder, losing them as they get older.
I think you're staring your own mortality in the face a little bit more as you get older, and you got you folks listening to this. These guys are in their 20s they're probably looking, oh, you're just getting soft or whatever, getting old and soft. And I'm like, well, maybe that's a little part of it. You should mellow with age a little bit. But yeah, I do think, I think more than anything for me, I know whenever Matt goes, it'll be like, wow, that was 12 years or 13 or 14, however many years I have of my life that's in the past. And it went fast. And it's like, what in the world? How? And you start looking ahead going, well, dude, how many more years do I have? And that might be getting a little deep on the philosophical spectrum of things, but
it is. For me, it's like I get a good appreciation of what these dogs actually did for me in their lifetime.
Yeah.
How hard they actually worked for. They love doing it. They love being in the outdoors and love hunting, but a lot of times, they do it for me. They do it for their owner is what they do it for. And that appreciation, like you just get more attached to that appreciation and what they have for you.
Hey, you walk in the door at the end of the day, and my kids are still at the age where they come running. They're little, and my oldest is 8. And in fact, I literally just picked them up from school right before this podcast for the day. But they come running. They see me and they're like, Daddy, and they come running. And I know that's not going to last. They're going to get to a point where they're like, hey, Dad, what's up? If they acknowledge my presence at all.
I barely get that.
But the dogs come running. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. Yeah. Oh, I got a puppy out there, man. All my dogs love me. They come running, but man, that puppy, he's just kind of puppies bring life back into you.
Yeah. Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. Puppies, I'm trying to convince my wife wants chickens, and I'm like, nope, ain't gonna happen.
No.
And we don't live in town, but we're like on the edge of town. And we got a big backyard, but 2 dogs fill it up pretty easy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
2 dogs and 3 kids. And I'm thinking, I told her, I said, I'd rather have, if we're going to add another living creature to this compound, I'd like it to be a bird dog this time.
Yeah.
Whether it's an English pointer or a setter or a Brittany or whatever, you know, I don't know. Well, that takes us back to breeds. You know, you obviously established your affinity for Brittany's, and it kind of runs in the family tradition. And I find that that's a thing with a lot of dog guys, that they'll have a breed that has been their family's had forever. And for me, that's Labradors. And we've had other dogs, different dogs. I raised hounds. We raised Walker Beagle crosses when I was a kid, and because for hunting snowshoe hares in the North Country, they wanted those longer legs, and so they'd cross those two, and that was an interesting mix. Let me tell you, it was some hard-headed, hard-running dogs, but we shot a lot of snowshoe hares over them. But we always had labs, you know. We had different bird dogs that came and went. But we always had labs. A lab was always a mainstay for us. And so that was kind of how I came across that. But what other breeds, when you're training, and I don't think you could probably rank breed by like, well, this is the best breed, this is the second best breed, this is the third best breed. But overall training, if somebody's out there listening to this and you're a trainer coming from that perspective, and they're looking for a bird dog, what do you recommend more than breed that they be looking for in a bird dog?
You know, it all depends on what they're going to hunt. So, like, I like my dogs the way they are, but, like, I'm a sharp-tail, sage hen, and hun hunter up here in Montana. The last 2 years, so the year before last, there's a lot of pheasants where I hunt.
Sure.
And I'll come across them. But I never went hunting specifically for pheasants one time. And then last year, I think I went one time and shot a couple, and that was it. So, you know, if you're a big time pheasant hunter, I'm not going to recommend my dogs to you at all. They adapt. Dogs will adapt, and a lot of times, but mine are naturally bred to range out. So then you're going to have to work with them to keep them closer. Whereas what we were talking about, like with the French Brittany, they're usually bred to hunt a little bit closer. They'd be a better
right.
So it's all going to depend on what your hunting style is and what you want to hunt. You know, I'm not a super huge fan of them, but a lot of people like those short hairs, and they're pretty adaptable. They work real well in that. You know, they're a tough dog. They work well in that pheasant country. They can also handle the heat for like early season, like up here, sharp-tail and hunting and stuff like that. And so then you take them down south, they can handle that. That thicker, you know, that more thorny stuff down like in Texas and stuff like that, Arizona. So a lot of people like those short hairs. It's not one that I would get personally, but there's nothing. I've had some good ones. I've seen some real good ones, but on my list, you know, my list is Brittany's first. If it wasn't Brittany's, it'd either be English pointers or setters, one of the two. And so I do like those. But you know, if you're a guy that wants to go hunt waterfowl and pheasants, I would definitely look at a lab. You know, that's where I'd be headed. Me personally, the lab's way down on my list because it wouldn't be able to handle what I do.
Right.
And so, yeah. So as far as breeds go, it's just going to have to look at what your where you live, what your hunting style is, and kind of go off that.
That's interesting take. And you say, you know, labs wouldn't be able to handle, you know, what you do. And I can hear it right now. There's a whole bunch of lab guys that are listening to this podcast just screaming at you right now. But you're right. You know, a Labrador is not the right tool for wide open prairie birds.
Yeah.
Can you shoot sharptail over a lab? Yeah, I've done it. I've shot chuckers, I've shot huns, and let me tell you what, chasing my 3-year-old fire breather up and down mountains, hunting chuckers, not very much fun because he chases them all the way to the top, no matter and I'm doing the best I can to stay with him. And he's like, come on. And the birds, no, it's not very much fun.
Yeah, no, where I'm hunting in September and stuff like that, it gets hot. It's going to be hard on those tabs and stuff like that. Vice versa, if I'm a waterfowl guy, my Brittany's aren't going to hold up.
No, right. Yeah, I like that line of thought, and I asked you that question kind of getting to where, because interesting to see, because there's a lot of folks out that are like, nope, German short hair for everything. And it's like, well, that's great, but man, I've hunted with a lot of different dog breeds, as I know you have as well. And there's not one breed that I've seen that does, like, I just look at it and be like, that's the dog I want for all situations. Yep. I haven't seen one like that. Probably the closest I would have to say, my buddy in North Dakota runs Draughts.
Yeah.
And they probably are the closest thing to that all-purpose do-all dog that I have seen, and he does everything. He does waterfowl, hunts pheasants, hunts sage grouse, or not sage grouse, but sharp-tail. He does it, and his dogs adapt well to all of it, and they do well with everything. But
they do.
They're still not. It's just, you need more than one dog if you're going to hunt multiple things.
If you're hunting ducks in negative 20 degrees, they're not going to hold up to what a lab can. If you're hunting, sharp tails in September and huns in September, when it's, reaching those high temps, they're going to give out before an English setter or pointer would. So they're a good dog, though. They're a good in-between dog.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things, and I'm interested to hear your take on this. When I hunted with the guys at Montana Upland last December, not this December 2022. We did a hunt with them, and with a promo with Federal Premium, we were testing out a bunch of new loads for Federal ammunition and putting the Savages to work on the different Savage shotguns to work. It was just a cool deal. Awesome guys. And Bryce DeVise, I don't know if you know Bryce. He's a dog breeder and trainer up there in Montana, but he's further west of you. And he primarily runs pointers, English pointers. But he had wasn't a draw thrower, it was a wire hair. He had a wire hair there. And whenever we got, like, when we were going to hunt something that was thick and nasty, he'd put that wire hair in there. And the pointers would skirt the edges of it, sniffing down into stuff. And I picked his brain a little bit, and he's like, yeah, they just don't like to hunt in that tight cover. They like to run and get out and run and use that nose. He's like, this guy gets in there and busts brush. Where I'm going with this is, they had a belt buckle that went around the camp every year for the guide who killed the most vermin, like porcupines, skunks, coyotes, raccoons, snakes, you name it. And whoever killed the most vermin got the belt buckle. And it was a different belt buckle for Montana silversmiths every year. It was a cool deal. And sure enough, that wire hair found a porcupine, and he pointed it. He didn't grab it. He pointed it. I said, how often does he not grab them? He goes, it's 50-50. He's like, these stinking German dogs have such a high prey drive.
They do.
That he goes, and not prey drive, but he said fur drive. He said they're all, because they're bred, those German breeds like the wire hair and the Draughtar, they're bred to do everything. They're bred to blood track. They're bred to hunt birds. They're bred to hunt, ant mammals, foxes, all that stuff. When you go over to the Hegewald in Germany, if you want to pass that field trail test, man, they gotta do everything. In fact,
it's like a B scale or whatever they call it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had Reese Hagen. I don't know if you know Reese. He has High Plains Gear down here. I think I'm remembering that name of that right. Reese, if you're listening to this, I hope you're at Pheasant Fest right now selling the snot out of your products, man. But I had him on. He's a local guy, and he runs Draughars, and he said the same thing. He said they're just like crazy about fur. He's like, if my dogs jump a fox while we're hunting chuckers, it's game over. He's like, they're on that fox.
Yep. Yeah, no, those German dogs, they're built a little bit different stuff. I had a Brittany one time that would, he'd hold his own with those German dogs. That sucker, he picked up a porcupine and brought it back to us across the field, holding that thing. What? And he was so proud of himself, and it was like a shock, and everybody's running because he's coming up to our feet trying to give us this porcupine. That thing, you just see his tail going back and forth, and man, we were out of there fast. Finally, he dropped it, and then he realized what he did. But it was at least 30 seconds he had it in his mouth.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, he would have held his own with any of those German breeds.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing, because it's like this. And my buddy in North Dakota, he's like, yeah, my dogs don't learn. They get a skunk, they eat it, and he's like, every time. And I've seen that quite a bit. We saw that in the North Country growing up where I did. There was always porcupines around. And it's those dogs. It seemed like anybody that had a German dog was getting into a porcupine like constantly.
Yeah. Knock on wood, I got a pretty good crew right now that likes, they'll point porcupines, but it's been a long time since I've had a pull quills out.
Yeah, I've only had to do it, in all the years, I've only had to do it on two of my personal dogs. And one of them was a German short-hair pointer that I had when I was in college, and she stuck her nose in the end of this log and whap, and she got just a few in the end of her nose and in her lips, and she didn't bite it. And so they're just dangling. They were just barely in there. And so I popped them out, and we kept on going, and no worse for the wear. And then the Mackinac, when he was a pup, got in. We were hunting sharptail and pheasants over in Sheridan, Wyoming, and that open country east of town. And he got in this plum thicket, and he was like, he was 6 months old, less than a year. I got him in April, and we were hunting that first fall. So, that would have been November, that first fall. And I dumped this rooster that he flushed, and it landed, kind of sailed down into this plum thicket, and he went in there after it and comes out. And I see him, like, all of a sudden he's like backing out of there, and he's shaking his head. And I thought, oh man, he got into a porcupine. And sure enough, it's same thing. He had like 4 quills in the end of his nose, and they're just barely in there.
I'll take that.
Yeah, he's a smart dog, and he's never to this day bothered with a porcupine. And then, so that was the funniest thing, is I popped those 4 quills out, and he went right back in there and found that rooster and brought it out to me. And I was like, "That boy, good job! Not bad for a 6-month-old puppy."
Yeah, worth his weight in gold.
The good ones are, man. Every time. So in your training, what does that look like? You're probably gearing up to start training dogs. Do people hire you? How's that work?
So I used to train full time, and
okay.
Long story short, I got a bad back injury, and I can't do it like I used to. So I'll take on a dog here and there, but majority of the time it's just working my own dogs. And that's, I love that, and I just find ways to do that. And so I'll take, my buddy I was talking about, I'll get his dog, and it'll spend the spring with me, and then later part of the summer when I start working dogs. So I'll start working dogs now until we got, a date in Montana now, where we can only work dogs on wild birds for up to that date. And I think it's through March, if I remember correctly. But after that, you can't work them on wild birds. And I personally am not much of I don't work my dogs a lot on release birds very much. I tend to go after the wild birds more. So we got some areas. We'll go to the mountains and let them run around there during, times. And then I got an area outside of town here that there's no birds at all. It's pretty desolate, but it's a section of state land that I can just go let them run and stuff like that. Then come August 1st, when we can start legally working dogs again, which I've always used that August 1st as a date to start working dogs on wild birds. I'll start getting my dogs out, and I'll get up usually between 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, drive a couple hours to get someplace by light. so I can work the dogs before they get too hot.
Right.
And then I come home. Some summers, like couple summers, like 2 summers ago, I had 2 pups. I kept out of a breeding of mine. I kept a couple litter mates, a male and a female, and I really wanted to work those hard. And so what I do is I took my trailer and I just parked it out in the middle of nowhere, and that's where I stayed. I think it was 27 days in August. I worked dogs, my own dogs, and stayed in that trailer. And, you talk to people, they say, "Oh, that's great. It must be fun, to go out there." And I was like, "No, actually, it's miserable." Go sit in a trailer when it's like 90, 100 degrees. You're away from your family and all that stuff. And but it's what needed to be done. Those dogs are young. They needed to get into a lot of birds. So they were, when season started September 1st, they were 10 months old. And I didn't guide, but I easily could have guided with those 2 10 months old by the time that I've worked them with it's in August there. So you put a lot of time, I put a lot of more time into my personal dogs than I ever have before. And to me, it's just, I don't know. I like working dogs. I like, I like working other people's dogs, but it's just something about being around. The older I get, just being around like your own family and your own dogs and stuff like that you just appreciate it more. Kind of goes back to what we're saying. How many years do you have left? Appreciate what you can.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So you hit on a good point there. And because there's probably people out here listening to this thinking, well, why would he go camp out in the middle of nowhere to put his dog on birds? That doesn't make any sense. Explain that, because you got 2 young dogs that have to get on birds. It takes birds to make a bird dog.
Exactly. That's it right there. It takes birds to make a bird dog. It takes wild birds to make a wild bird dog.
Yes.
And so I'm kind of fortunate. If I ever wanted to, my neighbor, they have short hairs and they are real big into the testing stuff. So they got, I don't know, a few hundred pigeons there. And so if I ever needed to, I could use those. And sometimes I've used them just to start a dog off with and just to see it out, like a training dog or something like that. But, if you want, you can, I could go out in the evening and I could work on pigeons and stuff, but it's not going to make the wild bird dog that I want. Over time, they'll learn that, that they could, the difference between the two if you worked them quite a bit. But in order to make that wild bird dog, you have to have wild birds. The places that I found the most birds were like 2.5 hours away from me, driving up there every day. And then, I was lucky because I worked from home, and so I could work dogs in the morning and use my computer and stuff. And we had a friend that had a ranch up there, and so I could go to his place and use his internet and stuff like that during the day. And then in the evening, I'd go work the dogs again. So you got like a few hours in the morning you can work them before it's too hot, and then you got just a little bit of time, 45 minutes in the evening time that you could go work them. And so that's what I typically would go do, that's how I got these dogs to where they were, is, working out in the middle of nowhere, or living out in the middle of nowhere and working those dogs morning and evening.
That makes perfect sense. And probably, when you're looking at getting a dog dialed on birds, not everybody listening to this is going to have that ability to go find wild birds in large numbers. That's okay. If you fire up that Onyx Hunt app, man, and you start looking for open ground, public ground that you can get out and run a dog on, you guys that live in the upper Midwest, I don't know what the dates exactly are for running birds, but it's somewhere in that August time frame, just like it is in Montana. And all the guys I know back there are getting young dogs in the woods, getting them on rough grouse, getting them on woodcock, getting them a nose full of birds, but they have to supplement with pigeons, or they have to go to a game bird farm and use released birds, because they just don't have that opportunity like we're blessed with out here. Yeah. But other than, when you talk about training, and I'm not going to ask you to give away any secrets, but because I've never personally trained a pointing dog. What's kind of square one? Where do you start? And what I mean is, people get the puppy, they bring it home. I know what that looks like for training a Labrador. Is it similar? Is it totally different? What does that look like?
Yeah. To me, okay, so for a pointing dog and a retrieving dog or a Labrador, it's going to be a little bit different. You got to put a lot of manners into a lab, stuff like that. And you do as well. Like, if the best way to ruin a hunt is to have an unruly dog out there.
Yeah, 100%.
That's your day's not going to be very fun with that. So you got to put the manners on them and stuff like that. My philosophy is, these dogs are born with it. I'm not. I try and stay out of it as much as possible. I'm just a little bit of a guide of the dogs to kind of guide them down the road of where they need to go. If they start bumping out of line, I'll push them back in line a little bit, but I just let them learn on their own. If they don't have the genetics, you're not going to make a bird dog. It's just not.
Sure.
Right. So you got to get the dogs that have the good genetics, the good lines, and then you just basically let them go out and do their thing. I take them out in the field. They've learned their manners. Basically my manners are like, they need to come when I call them. I teach them whoa, stop when that, and that's about all I teach them. The rest, I let them do themselves. If they want to, they're not going to figure out how to find birds with me telling them where to go.
Right.
With that. And so they're going to learn to find the birds where they're going to figure out, okay, in, this area I've found birds like this before and this type of stuff. So I just let them go learn on their own. And so I'll take them out in the field. I put a GPS collar on them and I let them go and see what they do. I don't let them. So my dogs range out, and here's what guiding them is. I don't let them. I kind of do a little bit of a mix up with them. I don't let them get out real far when they're young. I don't let them get out there that 300, 400, 500 yards. I keep them kind of close. But then what happened, what I started noticing in years past, a lot of years ago, is my dogs used to be wide ranging dogs, and then they became medium ranging dogs, and I couldn't figure out why. It's because my philosophy was like, keep them close until they figure out and let it go out. Well, as they're younger, they never figured out how to range out. And so they never did. So what I do now, like with these, the last pups and the couple generations before, is I'll go take them and work them on birds. And then on bird areas, and I keep them close. Then I'll go to another area where I know there's not going to be any birds, like a stubble field, something like that. Your possibilities of seeing birds are pretty small, there. And I just let the dogs just run. Just let them go, run, have fun. There's no whistle. There's no calling them back. If they want to get 400, 500, 600 yards out there and just goof off, I let them do it. I let them be pups. I let them do it. I let them have fun. So they get that, like, okay, it's all right to be this far away from my owner. And then we'll get back in there and I'll call them in when I'm starting to work on birds and stuff like that too. So I switched it up with them a little bit because, you get a dog starts busting birds, a pointing dog, and they learn that they can do that. They're going to just keep doing that. So if you let a pup out there 400 yards and go out there and bust birds, by the time I get to the dog to kind of guide it a little bit more, the dog's forgot what happened.
Right.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, it's just kind of like, I read the dog. If the dog needs to run, if the dog's starting to want to stay too close and stop wanting to go out so much, then I take him to those fields and I just let him run and let him have fun and be a pup. That's a very important thing, is let them be a pup. Don't sit there and make it strict. I went with, I worked with the guy I really admire. I went up and I bred a dog to one of his dogs, and he had a pup that was, I would say, 4 months old at the time, and he had some quail in his backyard. He's a professional dog trainer. He had some quail.
Who is this? Who are you talking about?
His name is Nolan Huffman, out of Lewiston, Montana. Real good guy. And I let him. I just, personally, I feel like I know a good amount about bird dogs and bird hunting and stuff like that. When it comes to training dogs, this guy knows a lot more than me. So I'm coming up on 45 years old, and I'm smart enough now to know that I can still learn. So I sat back and watched him, what he did. And he took this pup, and he had some quail that were just kind of out feeding and stuff like that. And this dog wasn't doing exactly what it was, pointing the birds. It was pretty impressive for a 4-month-old pup, what it was doing. but the dog was messing up a little bit here and there, and he just kind of was like letting it be a pup. And he's produced some big name dogs and some really good dogs and stuff like that. But just sitting there letting him watch, it kind of goes back to my philosophy. He was just letting the pup do his own thing. He was letting be a pup, have fun. The dog was pointing birds, and then he was chasing the birds, and then he'd go look for another one, and the bird would pop up wild, and he'd chase it. And when I was younger, what I would have done is I would have went and grabbed that pup and corrected it right there. Like, okay, a bird got up, I'm going to go teach it to do a stop to flush, or the stuff like that. No, he just let the bird go, and it kind of goes back to my philosophy: let the dog go, let the bird go, and let them when they're young just be pups. Have fun with it, so they enjoy it.
Kind of like they'll figure out they can't catch that bird after a while. They do it enough, and they're like, "Yeah, I can't catch those when they fly."
Yep.
So,
yep. And as they get older, you can start working with them a little bit more too.
Yeah, you start walking in, and they're on point, and I'm sure you're reinforcing the whoa command as you're walking in. Trying to get them to be still and be steady.
Yeah. I try not to speak too much. So with my dogs being out there, that long distance, that 200 or 300, 400
you can't
yards,
talk to them. Sure,
you can't talk. So I just more along the lines letting them, teaching them, having them do that, because they'll be out there, and I'll run 3-4 dogs at a time, and so I shouldn't say this because this next season is going to be a horrible season. Then rarely do I get dogs that will break a back and stuff like that. I get a point, I'll get a dog point, and I'll get 2 or 3 dogs backing. And so, but sometimes, I'll look at my Garmin GPS, and they'll be out there, look at my watch, and they'll say 350 yards, 400 yards away. And I need I can't talk to those dogs that far away. I can't tell them. I need those dogs to be able to do what they're doing, supposed to be doing at that distance. And so,
and I think that's the intimidating part for people. I know it would be for me.
Yeah.
Not having that control, where I have the same philosophy when it comes to we'll take Hondo, my 3-year-old lab, sending him on a blind retrieve. He's got to navigate a river. There's a bunch of brush on the other side. Bird went down. It's over there. It may be dead. It may be crippled. I don't know. Can't tell. But all I need him to do, you hit the nail on the head earlier. He's got the nose. I don't have the nose. My job is to get him close and then get out of his way. And the more I hit the whistle, the more I correct him, the more I stimulate him, the more distracted he's going to get, the more frustrated he's going to get, and he's going to screw up more than anything. And when I should just leave him alone, get him close, leave him alone, let his nose do the job.
Yep. Trust your dog.
Yes. When I do that, when I can get out of my own stupid way, dog does just fine.
Yep.
Dog does just fine.
That's the way I got with my dogs too.
This episode of the Wingmen Podcast is brought to you by Cryptek. Guys, I'm super stoked to be partnering with Cryptek, and I love the fact that I share the same ideals with them. I love the fact this company is veteran-owned, American hunter patriots. It's awesome. I also love the fact that they make top-notch hunting gear, and they offer it in killer camo patterns that are going to keep you concealed across a huge range of environments and conditions. So, guys, if you're looking for more gear, get out there and check out Cryptek. Montana, the switch gears completely off of dogs here. We're going to stay on upland bird hunting.
Okay.
Montana just, in the blog, Andrew McKean from Outdoor Life is actually, I can't believe it, but he agreed to write some blogs for us. And the first ones he did, he's up there, Montana. And Montana just did some interesting stuff with their upland bird seasons. And what they did was, and these blogs are out today. They're out right now. They'll both, for you guys that are signed up to the Wingmen, the Wing Beats newsletter. If you're not, I'd appreciate it if you were. Just go to wingmen.com and sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get everything. That blog will be out today, but Montana basically put a a waiting period in effect for non-resident upland bird hunters.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
And
it's okay to say you like it.
I'm not going to say I like it. I'm going to say it's needed.
Sure.
And so I actually am on the Montana Upland Bird Hunting Council.
Okay.
And so I got to say so on some of that stuff. What we're seeing is, I don't know. So I bet you, my phone number's online and stuff like that. I bet you I'm going to get some hate mail for all this, but oh well. We're seeing a lot. I don't know if abuse is the word to use for it, but that's the reason why, like, we never had the laws of the dates and all that stuff. People just respected the birds and stuff like that. And we never needed to really worry about that. Well, what's happened is we're having a lot of out-of-staters bringing in truckloads of dogs and working on these dogs, on these birds before they're really ready. And this isn't every one of them. There's some of them that are good and
sure.
respect the birds and stuff like that and stuff. But we've been seeing them where they've come in and they're just, not really respectful of the birds. They're worried more about the bird dog than the bird itself. And so they're coming in and doing the training and earlier than they should be and working dogs. They'll come in with 20, 30 dogs, sometimes more, working on these birds, and the birds are still maturing and they're not getting that life, that life maturity that they need. And so that's why we had to put the seasons on them. And so we put a season on it, and then there's always a loophole. And so then they kind of found out, well, I can do it this way or I can do it that way. And so then we had to add, another, I shouldn't say we added, it was advised that they start, putting a hold on there and put some stuff on there. The big part, social media is great, but social media can also kill a spot instantly. And we're getting up in that northeast part of the corner of the state. There's decent hunting up there, but I used to go up there quite a bit. And the last time I went up there, I didn't want to go back up because you're fighting so many people, and it's not, you feel bad shooting the birds because they're constantly getting pushed around by people. And in the last, numbers may not be exactly right, but I think in the last 5 years, the non-resident license has gone up by 55% for upland bird hunting.
Wow.
And so you start, and then there's a lot of it. There's certain areas in Montana that, like, where the birds are going to be, like in, the central part of the state, up in the northeast part of the state, in different areas. And if with social media, like, it'll get on there and be like, okay, such and such area is not doing good. But then somebody else saying hitting it hard in this area. So then all the pressure goes to that area.
Sure.
And so it's just kind of like, we really got to protect the birds is what it's about. And growing up, like in the area that I hunt, you knew everybody that hunted there. And even the non-residents, you'd get a few non-residents there and you knew them. Everybody knew each other. You all got along. You all respected each other. Everybody respected the birds. And then some things started happening here and there. There was like one particular show, like in the area I hunt, they listed the area that I hunt. And like they gave like block management names. I mean, like it was just like,
oh wow,
like it was pretty bad. And so I was like, like they said, they made the comment, if you want birds to rival South Dakota, you go to this place.
Oh my gosh, man. Hot spotted it.
Yeah, my heart dropped a little bit. I didn't think too much about it because this was quite a few years ago. And I've been working dogs in August and everything was going good. And then come September 1st, I'm headed up to hunt. And I go to the same spot every year that I hunt. I saw, and it was within a 5-mile area, I saw 15 non-resident vehicles there that I'd never seen before. And that was like opening morning within just a little 5-mile area, like on road, and they're parked off there. That area used to be great for bird hunting. I grew up with my dad hunting it. I grew up with my grandpa, friends of the family. We hunted that area. We always got new birds. I went there this year and I saw 2 birds. And I'm not going to say that's all due to non-resident hunters.
Yeah.
But it has its effect on it. And so, like, the one guy that I talked to, and this, not everybody's this way, but one guy I talked to, I asked him, I said, I just stopped and talked to him. I said, hey, how's the hunting going? He was from Minnesota, I think. And he goes, great. I've been up here for a whole month, camped out in my trailer. He goes, I shot my limit of sharp-tail every day and sage hens every day. And, and he hadn't left that area.
And there's very few residents that are putting that level of pressure on birds.
Right.
Very few.
Yeah.
It's and you can't necessarily fault him as for wanting to do that.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you gotta look. I personally couldn't do that.
No,
I couldn't for two reasons. Logistically, I couldn't pull off a month of straight bird hunting. I couldn't. I have way more responsibilities than that.
Exactly. He was retired.
Right. And good for him. I'm glad he can. But at what point is enough?
Exactly.
And I'm kind of leaning on this guy, but not him personally, but more the example than anything. Because it's like, dude, do you really need to shoot a limit of birds every day?
No. My buddies I was talking about that come up from like tech. So I guess my friends that, from the email, that they're one's from Texas, one's from Kansas, and one's from Missouri and Mississippi. And they'd come up. We did a 5-day hunt, and the birds were down. We shot 2 birds between the 4 of us, the whole trip. And we could have shot more. We just didn't do it. And this was in Nebraska. And so it was still one of the best trips we ever had. We got some good dog work still, but we just didn't need to shoot the birds. And that's just the way we were. I could have gone to a state. I'm not going to go back to that area for a while. So I could have gone back there and busted up every bird we saw and all that stuff. It just wasn't respectful for the birds. It wasn't respectful for the residents. It wasn't respectful for all that stuff. But we're seeing a lot of that here. And we're just kind of having to protect those birds.
Yeah. No, that makes 100% sense. Absolutely. We do. Western states manage big game very stringently, very tightly. And I feel like a lot of times upland birds in particular, slip through the cracks in a lot of the Western states. Yeah. Not just Montana, Wyoming. They gave us an extra, our bird season, let me rephrase. Our chucker and gray partridge season closed yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
And they gave us in a whole month of February. In the past, it didn't run that long. It would close about the same time as goose season, but they gave us to the end of the month. I didn't personally take advantage of that because I was too busy working. But I know guys that did, and they were talking about limiting their take, because you could shoot 5 of each species each day. And where we are, right here locally, that's mostly chuckers is what your harvest would consist of. There's other places where it's flip-flopped. There's a lot more huns than there are chuckers, but you could go out conceivably and shoot 10 birds every day, 5 chuckers, 5 huns. If you could, if you had the dog power and the legs and the leg strength to do that and the time. This guy I was visiting with, and I'm hoping to get him on the podcast in the next few weeks here, was talking about really limiting the take, letting the dogs work, getting those points, and getting that dog work in, but really being very selective on harvest, where he's only shooting a couple of birds, and he's getting multiple covey flushes a day, but not at this time of the year, not following up on the covey flush, maybe shooting 1 bird out of a covey and then go and find another covey, not following up singles at this time in the season. It's kind of giving those birds a break.
Yeah. This year, December was, so our December was pretty mild, and it was pretty nice for working dogs and stuff like that. And the birds, it was actually December, like usually December. So I'll hunt all the time, but December is usually like, some of those times that like my good friend and I was talking about, we've been out. It's been -29 out in December, and it's super cold. This year is like in the 50s. I was wearing a t-shirt. It was like perfect for bird hunting. The birds were grouped up, but they're still holding well. Like you could have been asked for a better situation for birds and stuff like that. And I would go out there and I would get into, I'd work from, usually be like, 3, 4 or 5 hours. I'd be out there and I'd get into a good, I would say anywhere from 6 to 9 coveys of huns. And then the sharp-tail, because they're grouped up, would be, I'd see in the hundreds of sharp-tails a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never loaded a shell into my gun the whole time. There was no reason why I couldn't, the birds were plentiful enough. I could have shot limits. I could have shot, a couple here and there. It was just pure like, okay, the birds have had a whole season of getting shot. I've shot enough of them. And it's just going out and enjoying the day. And so I think if we can get more people doing that, it's going to be a lot easier on the birds.
Yeah. Well, I think Montana's took a step in the right direction for sure. With that legislation, with that staggered start, we're starting to see that in a lot of different things all across the western states, whether it's upland bird hunting, whether it's shed antler hunting.
Yeah.
Here in Wyoming, residents have like a 10-day head start this year when the shed season opens over on the western side of the divide. And I'm all for it. I think it's great. It's not that I don't like non-resident hunters. I do.
Yeah.
I was a non-resident hunter a couple weeks ago in Colorado. I'm going to be a non-resident hunter next week in Nebraska. We should be. It's a big country. There's lots of opportunity out here in the United States and in Canada. We should be able to go out and hunt different places and have fun. But with that comes a lot of responsibility.
Yep.
And I do think. I think in large part that non-resident hunters are respectful of where they are. They enjoy it. They honestly, I think, have a larger appreciation in some instances for the land than the people that live there. Yeah. They get out there and they'll maybe they come from Pennsylvania or someplace back east or in the Midwest, come from a big city, and the only time they get to see big, wide open spaces and mountains and big sweeping forests are when they come to the public lands out west, to hunt. And they love it and they treat it well. They pick up after themselves, and it just falls on everybody. But I do think that residents should get a head start, whether it's Montana or Wyoming or wherever it might be. I don't think that's a bad thing. Just because, like you said, there's so much pressure. In hunting, we keep hearing the same old song and dance about, hunter numbers are declining, hunter numbers are declining, hunter numbers are declining. Well, that may be true given license sales, but hunter days are increasing.
Exactly. That's exactly where it's at.
When we look at the ability to work remotely, that is a phenomenon that's just happened in large part in the last few years. Let's face it.
Yep.
A lot of people, if they're not retired, can go live in a camper trailer. And if they have Starlink, they have internet access. They can work from the prairie in the afternoons and run bird dogs at night and in the mornings.
That's what I did.
And shoot their limits,
Yep. No, and I'll be the first to say, resident hunters aren't gonna pay the bill to take care of these.
Yes, exactly.
So there's a definitely need.
That's across the board. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's upland birds, it doesn't matter if it's big game. Non-resident hunters spend more money in almost every state than resident hunters in the West, in the western states. It's where we live. It's what we're talking about.
Yeah,
they spend more money. It's more expensive for them to come out here and do it. We need non-resident hunters in all these states, but we also need to be able to manage our wildlife. And because if we don't, those 20 dog trailers parked on that parcel of BLM ground, those birds aren't gonna make it.
Nope.
They can't do it.
No, we definitely need those stuff like that. And I've always wondered if it'll ever go back to. So like when my dad started hunting, in the early 60s, my dad started hunting sage hens down in Utah, and there was a draw system back then. And I think Utah actually does have a draw system again now, but he'd draw and he'd get like 2 leg bands, or how many ever it was, 3 leg bands, and you'd go out and shoot his birds, and you have to put a leg band on them, stuff like that. And I always wonder if it's going to get to the point where we have to go to a draw system.
I hope not. I hope not. You know, when we put together our big sage grouse project film in the long form film. Thank you. I appreciate that. That was a lot of work. It was funny when I went back and watched the whole thing. I watched myself age over the 2 years it took us to build that film. It started out, I look like you. I didn't have any gray in my beard. And then all of a sudden, by the time it was done, I was like salt and pepper. I'm like, what happened? That film took almost 3 years to build. But it was a ton of fun to do. And we explored just some amazing topics. And it was crazy because it was like a giant onion, you know, you'd peel back one layer and then there'd be another layer to it, another layer to it, another layer to it. And I mean, I obviously have my own opinions as to why sage grouse are struggling across their range. But one of the things that was talked about, that was in discussion, was going to a draw for those birds, drawing licenses in the state of Wyoming, which is still the core of sage grouse range. And nobody wants to do it.
No,
the agencies don't want to do it. The hunters don't want to do it. We don't want to have to go there because it is literally the last resort before a listing. I think we got some time. We got some more things we can do. Montana's very, very open about, like, so our sage hen season goes September, the month of September. You can shoot 2 a day, resident, non-resident. You know, we got a lot of room to work there. I'll be flat honest. I don't think, if we can get people to respect the birds, I don't think we need to change it at all. And so, you know, what happens is sometimes, and majority of people do respect the birds, but what happens is somebody will go in, they'll find a clutch of birds. They'll go shoot their 2, and then the next day they go back, shoot 2 more, and then go shoot 2 more. And they're
gone.
They shoot them all. Yep.
Yeah, and that's not everybody across the board. There's, you know, that's the least majority of people will do that. But if we can get people, like, you know, even if we went to like a non-resident, they can shoot X number of sage hens in Montana and stuff like that. That's going to really do it. So we talk, you know, along the lines of your video. So like when I was back before the 2015 decision to put the birds on the endangered species list or not, Montana wasn't doing anything. Wyoming had a plan together. Our governor at the time was not interested. There was governor meetings about it. Montana's chair was open. Nothing was happening in Montana. So I just decided to start doing things on my own. I put a little group together, coalition, and so it was worked with the ranching, the mining, the oil and gas, and the hunting industry. Because those are the 4 industries that bird could really affect it the most. And so we started working together. We put a plan together. I did conservation projects. I went and did public speaking. The mining and the oil and gas companies had a lot of political pull. They went to the political side of it, and we got this group together, and it just behind the scenes really pushed Montana to get something together. And so it was fun. I learned a lot, and I grew a lot from that, but I also put what I knew into it. Like I talked about, my family been hunting the birds since the 1800s. So there's a lot of history and, you know, knowledge put into me from generations into the birds. And so I got to put my side of that into it. And it really made it so we didn't have to list that bird under the endangered species list at the time, because Montana had the highest population next to Wyoming. Yep. And so we needed something there. And then Wyoming put a great plan together. Your guys, if anybody hasn't watched that film, I seriously encourage you to go take an evening and watch it. And because it teaches basically what I've always preached is what you guys said in that film. It's a good representation of it. But with that said, that was a 2015 decision. It wasn't placed there, but you're slowly starting to hear the behind the scenes of people saying things. Oh, the birds populations are declining again. which I don't think they are, but you're starting to hear that political side of it. I mean, if you could take one thing, if you could take the oil and gas, the mining, the ranching, and the hunting industry out with one bird, and the environmentalists and the animal rights activists are going to be all over that as much as they can.
Yep.
And so the wording that they used at the time was scary. They used words such as no human activity.
Yes.
So that's not just going to, people like I'm sitting there watching that, and they also use the phrase any suitable sage grouse country. It doesn't have to be where sage grouse live.
Exactly.
So if you know where the sage grouse have lived, and you see other places that they're not there, but it could be there, those places are cut off to all those industries, and not just upland bird hunters, mule deer hunters, antelope hunters, people that want to go for a nature walk, anybody, no human activity whatsoever. So that bird, your guys has filmed it a lot of justice for that bird. And it's going to be an important, it's going to come back. That whole situation is going to come back into effect. You're starting to hear the rumbling about it a little bit now.
Yeah. Well, we're looking at an election year, and it's like any angle that can be worked will be worked. And I appreciate the pumping of the film. You guys can find the full length film on the Wingmen YouTube channel, and I believe it's on the Eastman's Hunting Journal YouTube channel as well. Ton of fun. And yeah, we cover a lot of ground in there, and you are absolutely right. The scariest thing about that, and that was one of those layers, we started out going, we should film a sage grouse hunt, and then we should get into the story. And then we got looking at the SIGIT, the Sage Grouse Implementation Team, and all the stuff that was going on around. I was like, holy smokes. And it took almost 3 years to complete that. And we tried to explore every angle that's out there with that film, but it became obvious, like you said, when it comes to sage grouse, and if it's not sage grouse, it's, prairie chickens in Kansas or Nebraska. If our enemies, if that anti-hunting side, that animal rights activist side gets their way, they will infiltrate the U.S. Forest Service, the U.S. Department of Interior, the Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They're already making inroads in those places. They're not being trained well in sound biological science in their liberal universities. And that's not an opinion from me. That's an opinion from Ed Arnett, the head of the Wildlife Society, who's also a professor. And there's concerns he has about modern day biology, wildlife biology curriculum and teaching. It's just crazy. But yeah, the zero human presence, whether it's National Forest, whether it's BLM, the Rock Springs, Wyoming BLM management plan that they're trying to shove down the state of Wyoming's throat right now is abhorrent. The amount of regulation and restriction placed on our public land that we can't all of a sudden can't go, like you said, you can't even go walk your dog on it. And once it came to light, they start dialing it back. Well, that's not what this means, and that's not what this means. Well, explain. And they couldn't explain. Ambiguous statements, vague commentary, to the point where it's like, what's your end goal here? And it's not what's best for wildlife. It's not even what's best for the land. It's furthering your political agenda.
Exactly.
It just, once again, hunters are all this brotherhood of hunters. We are in the same boat.
Yep.
Whether we're residents, whether we're non-residents, doesn't matter what it is. We have to be of one mind. We have to be in the same ship, or we're all going to sink separately. I keep talking about that and preaching that, and you still see so much division. Well, I'm right down to, and I'm going to pick on you a little bit here. We're right down to, well, I'm not a lab guy. I'm a Brittany guy. Who cares?
Exactly.
Who cares? We're bird hunters, man. Let's get along.
Yep.
Are we going to have disagreements? Yeah, let's settle in the old-fashioned way. We talk about them, and we work things out. We don't divide into tribes and camps and hate each other over it.
Exactly.
Drives me nuts.
Yeah, there are the people that, some of them need to be put in check, but the majority of us are the same. Whether you're a big game hunter, you're an upland bird hunter, you're the same. And we can, like you said, we gotta stop getting that so political side of it and everything, and just keep working towards the goal of what's best for wildlife and what's best for hunting. Like hunting's the Eastmans and myself and so many other people and so many people coming up. Hunting is life. It's not, like I'm not going to sit there and say I hunt to eat. I eat what I hunt. I hunt to go out there to just relax, to enjoy life and stuff like that. And sometimes I shoot a bird. Like, I'm not going to lie. So I go out there. Like, the main reason to go out there is you're going out there to kill something, to shoot something. But sometimes I do, sometimes I don't.
Right.
Stuff like that. And that's, my prerogative as long as I'm within the laws. But we don't have what's best. We need to look what's best for the birds, but we also need to look what's best for us as hunters to keep this going, because there's a possibility it may not happen someday. Will it be my generation? No, we'll always have hunting. Will it be my kids? Maybe, they might be in trouble. So we got to keep that. My family, going back to the 1800s, hunting, not just hunting birds, but hunting big game. So my family, the Henry Mountains.
I do.
So my great uncles were like sheep. We had they're a sheep family, and so they sheep herded down there, like in the Henrys and stuff like that. And so, I want to be able to someday to go down there and have that opportunity to be where they hunted. They shared some stories. That was back before there was roads in the Henrys.
Yeah.
They shared stories of some monster bucks back there. And I want to be able to go, the chance of me drawing that tag are very slim, but I want to have that opportunity to do it.
Right.
All that stuff. So we got to do what's best for the birds, best for the wildlife, what's best for hunters.
You hit on something that I think is super important, that I don't hunt to eat. You know what I mean? I love wild game. I love eating upland birds. I love eating waterfowl. My kids the other night were like, "Dad, can we have goose nuggets?" And I'm like, "Sure." We got out some goose breast, thawed it out, and made nuggets. We don't eat a lot of chicken in our house. We don't eat a lot of store-bought meat at our house. But the idea that I'm going to go out and fill my freezer with grouse. I was watching a Nat Geo show the other day in Alaska, and this young couple was there to get this grand idea. They're going to go live off grid and homestead at their family cabin 30 miles outside of Anchorage, go live in the bush. And they're out hunting grouse. Well, they were horrible at hunting grouse, first of all. And second of all, they had this, and granted it's for TV, so I shouldn't get too riled up, but we're going to fill our freezer, make sure that we got meat in the freezer so we don't starve this winter with grouse.
Yep.
How many hundreds of grouse are you going to shoot?
Yeah.
It's like, holy smokes. And the idea that, well, I'm filling my freezer with organic meat. We're going to shoot like 8-10 pronghorn does.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's going to take to get you through a year of eating meat.
Exactly.
One white-tailed deer ain't going to cut it. I have 3 kids. We eat almost exclusively wild game in my house. And if I don't kill at least 2 elk every year, we're out of meat by July or August. Last year was the first year in a really long time that I didn't shoot an elk of any kind, a bull, cow, nothing. Yeah. And my freezer's about out. I loaded up on Canada geese the last part of the season. So I've got quite a bit of stuff to make into burger and sausage. But, this idea that you're going to go out and shoot 1 deer and you're filling the freezer. No, that's not what hunting is about. Is hunting about procuring food at its core? Yes, absolutely 100%. But it's more than that. And it's okay to say, I enjoy going out and hunting. I enjoy the dog work. I enjoy the camaraderie. I enjoy the time in the field looking at the animals. I enjoy the fact that my dollars that I spend on all this
go to support scientific wildlife management. We need to be pounding on that way hard. The food's great. I love eating sharptail. I love eating pheasants. I love eating all of it. But I'm probably not going to be able to solely feed my family. Here's the thing. That mindset is dangerously close to market hunting.
Yep.
To the market hunting mindset that we did away with because we extirpated our wildlife herds because we ate them all. You know, or we were, you know, butchering and slaughtering them by the hundreds of thousands for furs and for feathers and different things. It's more than that. Hunting has to be more than that. It has to be more than just food procurement. The food procurement side of it's important and it's great, but there's way more to it. And it's okay to say that you like that, you know.
Yeah. Trophy hunting is like, you know, switching off from the birds a little bit. Trophy hunting for big game is so important. If we didn't have that, you know, take a look at like we'll say wild sheep. You know, they had the sheep show down there in Reno this
right.
last year. And some of those tags, a couple of those tags sold for like $600,000.
Yep.
And thank you to whoever spent that money on it. So maybe one day I'll have an opportunity to hunt them.
Exactly. You know, the Antelope Island tag in Utah at Expo, it's a mule deer tag, went for $550,000 this year at Expo. The year before, if I'm not mistaken, it went for $750,000.
Yeah, it was up there.
You know, it's crazy, but we need that. We need that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a friend of mine from Bozeman, I hate to even admit that, I have a friend in Bozeman, but I'm teasing. Ryan Bassam, I love you, dude. He started a new program called the Road to 100, and it's waterfowl based. It's to collect all 100 species of waterfowl around the globe.
Oh, fun.
And yeah, it's super cool. He's got an awesome podcast. I had him on talking about it a few episodes back. If you guys go check that one out, it's super great. Ryan's a good dude. But it's the trophy hunting equivalent of bird hunting.
Yep.
You're collecting at that point, and you're spending a lot of money to go around different places and collect birds, shoot birds that you've never shot before, get them mounted, eat their meat. The whole thing. It's a holistic thing. It's a holistic experience. You know, this bad rap that trophy hunting has, whether it's trophy hunting for big game or trophy hunting for birds, it gets a bad rap. Oh, you're just doing it for the trophy, not the meat. Like, no, I'm still eating it.
Mm-hmm.
We have laws. Again, you can't just shoot an elk, cut its head off, and leave it there. You have to take it. You eat it. You take it home and eat it. You can eat every single trophy if you want to. You know, outside of brown bears or, you know, wolves or, you know, mountain lions. And I've eaten mountain lion and it's excellent. You can eat all that stuff. There's some things that, oh man, the guys we hunted with in Alberta outfit for wolves. And they said that they had this guy come in camp from China and shot his just old wolf, hardly had a tooth in its head. Shot this wolf and they skinned it. And it's cold, and he goes outside and he starts cutting meat off the carcass. And he's gonna eat it. And they're like, yeah, I wouldn't eat that wolf, man. I don't know about that. You know, they carry some disease you don't want to get, and wolves carry some pretty nasty stuff. Imagine an unvaccinated canine, you know, running around in the wild, the amount of stuff they'd have.
Exactly.
He said he started cooking that meat and the parasites started coming out of the meat, like crawling out of the meat. And he said it was loaded with worms and grubs and just stunk. And it's like, yeah, that's why we don't eat wolves. You know, it's like, can you? Yeah, well done. Probably not going to hurt you, but no, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, and are you going to eat every bird you shoot? Yeah, I do. You know, and that's the way it is. But there's just so much more to it. And I'm glad you hit on that. I really am, because, you know, you look at sage grouse, for example, and I didn't shoot a sage grouse last year. I didn't even, we had, I'm waiting for my kids, my kids to get old enough where they can go out and they can experience it and appreciate it, because it's not something that I'm going to go out and shoot, you know, my limit every day. We're going to go on a big camping excursion one weekend, and we're going to shoot a few birds. We're going to watch sunsets. We're going to flush birds. We're going to enjoy the whole process. And that's going to be the sage grouse experience. I'm not trying to feed my family or rail. We're not building the railroads across the plains feeding our workers with sage grouse.
Exactly.
like they did back in the day. Yeah, it's just different, man. It's unique. It just kind of is what it is. It's different out here.
Yeah.
I feel for a lot of those guys in the Southeast and their quail.
Exactly. Yeah.
They have no wild quail.
No.
They're gone.
And I'm a strict wild bird hunter guy. And but I don't have any problem for somebody that wants to go and here I'll give you an example. These guys like down east, they have to go out and shoot on plantations, planted birds, stuff like that.
Right.
And to me it's not fun, but I will say this, if we don't have those people that are shooting release birds, upland bird hunting's in trouble.
It dies. It dies 100%.
Yeah.
100%. South Dakota, I'm sorry. South Dakota can't sustain upland bird hunting by itself.
Nope. All the guys that buy licenses that,
yes,
they're part of Pheasants Forever and all that stuff. A lot of those guys may never see a wild bird. They just hunt release birds and plantations and stuff like that. They pour the dollars in that helps us as wild bird hunters keep going.
Yep, 100%. 100%. Yeah, I we could sit here and doom scroll all day long if we wanted to, but it's not going to get us anywhere. In the end, I think the future of hunting is very, very bright because we have a lot of people like yourself out there that are willing to take the time out of their daily lives and get organized and get behind groups to help sage grouse out, to run advisory councils for their states that they live in. And kudos, man. Good on you. Good for you. I feel blessed because I have this platform to talk about things and have people on and have have difficult conversations or very pointed conversations. But those things have to happen if we're gonna keep hunting the way that we are. But I see the future of hunting, bird hunting especially, is just super bright because people are passionate about it. They're just passionate about it. They love it.
What's funny is it used to be like, so years ago, it used to be like a bunch of old guys out there bird hunting. And that was, only it was pretty much the old guys is all you'd see that were the big time bird hunters because it was dying off. Well, people just wanted to go shoot the big deer, the big antelope, big elk and stuff like that. Well, then soon people started figure it out. And now you see a lot of younger generation, that 20s, 30s year old people out there bird hunting because they find how rewarding it is and how much fun it is and stuff like that. So it's changed over the years. And like you said, I do see a bright future for it as long as we can protect hunting and protect the birds.
Yep, I agree 100%. Well, Brandon, I've had a wonderful time visiting with you. It'd be fun to get together and do a bird hunt sometime.
Well, let's do it this year.
Yeah, well, let's stay in touch because like I said, I'm going to be in the market for an actual bird dog instead of just a retriever. Oh man,
there's been a lot of birds shot over labs, a lot of upland.
Oh yeah, I know, but it's funny. My guys down here that I hunt with, we're all lab guys, and it's tough to beat a lab in a thick cattail marsh or a heavy grassed up irrigation canal roosting out pheasants.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to beat a lab for that. They do a really good job at it. But man, when you're out chasing grouse on the open plains or chuckers in rough country, it's nice to have a pointing dog. It really is. It really is.
It's fun.
Well, I appreciate your time, dude. It was a great conversation. Guys, thanks for tuning in to this podcast with Brandon Moss. We've had a great time. Man, we covered some ground in this one. Just kind of like his bird dogs. We ran all over the countryside, tore stuff up, peed on a few things, probably flushed some birds and ruffled some feathers in the process, and had a really good time doing it. And I hope you enjoyed this. And you can find all the stuff with it that Brandon and I talked about, including the Wingmen Sage Grouse Project film on the YouTube channels. And let us know what you thought of this podcast. Leave us a comment, leave us a rating. because that's how we know what to produce, and it helps really drive traffic to continue producing awesome content for you. So thanks to my guest, Brandon Moss, and thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Wingmen Podcast.